Hello. Today I'm going to continue revealing the explosive drama that unfolded on Wednesday. Victor Newman will kidnap Jack Abbott and turn against the Abbott family. Wednesday opens as the final spark of a long-simmering tension, as the fragile balance between the families begins to crumble simultaneously. No longer are there subtle intimidation tactics or deterrent moves like before. This time, Victor steps directly into the darkest depths of his nature, where power is no longer protected by reason, but by absolute control. His targeting of Jack is not merely an attack on longtime rival, but a direct declaration of war against the entire Abbott family. In Victor's eyes, Jack is not simply a person to be removed from the chessboard, but the perfect leverage to distort the situation, forcing the remaining members to react in panic and ruining all the calculations Kane is trying to build around the Chancellor. The most terrifying thing wasn't the kidnapping itself, but the sheer ruthlessness behind it. Victor didn't act in a fit of rage. He calculated. He chose the right person, the right time, and the right level of cruelty necessary to make everyone understand that when cornered, he was ready to turn the entire corporate war into a hostage war. Jack becoming the target instantly changed the situation, because Jack was never just a name in the power of struggle. He was the spiritual center of the Abbott family, the one who kept the family's principles intact amidst countless years of retaliation. Therefore, Victor's attack on Jack carried a far more terrifying symbolic significance than any financial blow. It was like strangling Abbott's honor in the very battle they were forced to fight. Jack being held hostage meant that any strategic advantage of the opposing side was immediately neutralized by fear. The Chancellor, who had been used as bait by Kane, was no longer the active pawn but had become a battlefield where emotions, revenge, and despair clashed. Victor understood this perfectly. He didn't need to win cleanly. He only needed to render his opponent incapable of playing by the rules. What made the atmosphere of Wednesday so thick and suffocating was Victor's actions tearing apart the facade of legitimacy that everyone had tried to maintain for the power struggle. Until now, no matter how deep the conspiracy, Genoa City had always presented itself as a battle of wins in boardrooms, of contracts, shares, and shifting alliances. But when Jack was kidnapped and used hostage, everything immediately slipped beyond that boundary. This was no longer about seizing the company, no longer about who held the Chancellor or who could corner Kane. This was the moment when power revealed its most primal nature, control through fear. And it is at this point that Victor both demonstrates his terrifying power and exposes the bitter truth that he is so obsessed with regaining the upper hand that he is willing to take everyone hostage, including the order he once proudly established. On a deeper level, Victor's actions also reveal a very personal attack that he never acknowledges. A man like Victor becomes even more ruthless when he feels power slipping from his grasp. Kane's presence, the Chancellor being dragged into this as bait, and the possibility of being outmaneuvered on the very chessboard he created touched Victor's greatest pride. He would not accept being cornered. He would certainly not accept having to react passively. Therefore, kidnapping Jack was not just a move aimed at Abbott or Kane, but also Victor's way of reassuring himself that he still controlled the rhythm of this game. The more one looks at that cruelty, the clearer it becomes that it's not simply the aggression of a powerful person, but also the desperate reaction of someone unable to bear the possibility of losing control. Meanwhile, in a completely different but equally psychologically significant way, Sharon gradually sinks into fear about Nick's condition. If Victor's blow was an outward burst of violence, Sharon's reaction is a silent but far more agonizing crisis, because it takes place within her heart. What frightens Sharon is not just the possibility that Nick is in danger, but the feeling of helplessness as she watches someone who was once so stable gradually slip into a state that even he can no longer control. There's a kind of fear that arises when you don't know where the person you love is. But there's another kind of fear, far more terrifying, when that person is still very close, yet their spirit is slipping away from all advice, all touch, all hope that they will stop themselves before it's too late. Sharon is living with the second type of fear. If one had to capture the core spirit of this entire narrative in a single feeling, it would be the sense of uncontrollable loss spreading like an ever-widening crack. Victor thinks he's tightening the noose around the chessboard, but in reality, he's being controlled by his own obsession. Sharon wants to keep Nick on the safe side, but the more she worries, the more she realizes she can't take his place. Noah wants to protect his loved ones, but he also understands that if Matt intervenes at the right moment, all preparations could become meaningless. It's this feeling of powerlessness that gives the story more depth than a simple confrontation. It makes more than just who wins and who loses, but who will break first. Personally, I really like this kind of climax in Y&R, where a major event isn't just shocking but triggers a chain reaction of psychological responses. It creates the feeling that the danger doesn't lie in a single moment, but in how each character is silently being eroded before the storm truly hits. And that's why the scariest thing about Wednesday wasn't Jack being taken hostage or Matt returning to threaten the Newman family, but the fact that all those signs pointed to a breaking point. Just one more push and everything could escalate from tension to complete collapse.